Welcome to the TAC Index AI podcast. We're the place where we blend TAC IP data, reports, charts, you name it, with the latest news in logistics, especially focusing on air cargo.
That's right.
Today, we're doing a deep dive into, the current state of air freight. We'll look at how it's impacting logistics and the wider market, using the latest TAC Index data and some other key financial news.
Yeah, we'll try to unpack how things like trade tensions, oil prices, how they're all sort of shaping the way goods are moving globally right now.
Okay, so where should we start? The rates.
Let's jump right in with the TAC index figures for the week ending May 26th. The global Baltic air freight index, that's the BAI 100, it rose slightly, 0.4% for the week.
Okay, 0.4%. Not huge, but it's up.
It's up week on week, yes. But it's important to keep the bigger picture in mind. Year on year, that global index is still down, about 5.5%.
Right, still lagging behind last year significantly then.
Exactly. Now, what's interesting is some sources are anticipating, speculating really, that rates could climb in the next few weeks.
Oh, why is that?
It seems tied to potential disruptions in ocean shipping. You know, the ongoing U.S.-China tariff situation. The thinking is it might push some shippers over to air cargo.
Ah, that sounds familiar. A bit like the COVID effect talk we heard.
Sort of, yeah, it echoes that a bit. That idea of mode shift when one mode faces serious disruption or cost increases. But there's a catch this time.
Which is?
Customs issues. We're hearing that's causing some hesitation, particularly for U.S.-bound business. So not a straightforward switch, perhaps.
Okay, so even if ocean gets tricky, air isn't automatically the easy answer because of potential customs delays. Makes sense. What are the actual rates doing, say, out of China?
Well, outbound rates from China did see a week-on-week increase, both to the U.S. and to Europe. Shanghai, the BAI 80 index, really rebounded, up 6.1% week-on-week.
Wow, 6.1%. That's quite a jump for Shanghai, but still down compared to last year.
Still down, yes. Shanghai's down 10.3% year-on-year. And general cargo on the Trans-Pacific lanes seems steady, but e-commerce is apparently quiet.
And you mentioned Shanghai up, but what about Hong Kong?
Hong Kong outbound, the BAI 30, actually dipped a bit, down 1.2% week-on-week, and it's also down 6.1% compared to last year.
So China's not monolithic. Shanghai up, Hong Kong down.
Precisely. And we're also seeing more spot market activity. Rates seem to be picking up there, too, especially following the cancellation of quite a few block space agreements, or BSAs, this year. Seems like a lot happened in the past week on that front.
BSAs.
Yeah.
Those are the longer-term space guarantees, right?
Yeah.
If they're being canceled. What does that tell us? People moving to the spot market.
It suggests, maybe less certainty or desire for more flexibility from both carriers and forwarders. They might be hesitant to lock into long-term deals when the market feels, unpredictable. It could mean more rate volatility for shippers relying on spot.
Okay. What about other regions? Vietnam, India?
Vietnam's rates to Europe were stable, but they actually decreased to the U.S., and year-on-year, both lanes are down significantly. India showed slight decreases week-on-week to both Europe and the U.S., and again, much lower than last year.
So a lot of regional variation, and mostly still below last year's levels, despite some weekly upticks. How about Europe looking outwards?
Europe outbound showed minor overall change, but lane variations are key. Gains to China, but declines to the U.S. and Japan.
Interesting. Any specific hubs?
Frankfurt, the BAI 20, edged up slightly, 0.2% week-on-week, but it's actually up 8.7% compared to last year.
Oh, Frankfurt's up year on year.
Yeah.
That's different from the global trend.
It is. London Heathrow, the BAI 40, was slightly down week-on-week, about 0.8%, and it's also down 4.1% year-on-year. So a mixed picture in Europe, too.
Okay. And North America outbound?
Rates to Europe were pretty flat, but lower to China and South America. There are some signs of overcapacity on Latin American routes, actually, after they saw some big rate increases over the past year.
Overcapacity to LATAM.
Oh, yeah.
And Chicago.
Chicago, the BAI 50 fell quite sharply week-on-week, 11.3%. But that was after some strong gains recently. It's still up 4.1% year-on-year.
Got it. So lots of specific details there. Anyone wanting the real nitty-gritty on specific lanes should check TACindex.com, I assume.
Absolutely. All the detailed data is there. Now, maybe we can shift gears a bit and look at those broader market forces, like the trade tensions you mentioned.
Yeah, the Wall Street Journal had a piece on that. Apparently, easing U.S.-EU trade tensions gave the stock market a big boost.
That's right. The S&P 500 saw a 2% jump, its biggest single-day gain since earlier in May, actually. Investors seem optimistic, maybe hoping for trade deals without too much economic damage.
A 2% jump is significant. Shows how sensitive markets are to trade news. But the article mentioned the EU tariffs are only delayed, right? until July 9th.
Exactly. So while there was relief, the underlying uncertainty hasn't completely vanished for companies. The market reacted well to the delay, especially after, some pretty strong rhetoric about potential 50% tariffs on the EU.
Yeah, that rhetoric does keep investors on edge. The Dow and NASDAQ jumped too, I saw.
They did. Dow up 1.8%, NASDAQ 2.5%. But the article also flags concerns, right, that maybe the rebound is a bit premature, stock valuations are still high, and the long-term trade policy direction is, well, unclear.
That on-off-again nature of the talks definitely creates headaches for planning. Businesses must hate it.
Absolutely. That uncertainty can dampen investment, which then has knock-on effects for logistics demand, including air freight, if companies aren't making things or moving things because they're worried about tariffs.
It slows everything down. Okay, and what about the oil price factor? Reuters reported prices easing?
Yeah, down about 1%. The main drivers seem to be concerns about a potential supply glut. There's progress, apparently, in the U.S.-Iran nuclear talks, which could mean more Iranian oil hitting the market if sanctions are lifted.
More supply potentially coming online.
Right. And also expectations that OPEC Plus might agree to accelerate their oil output hikes for July. They have meetings coming up. Brent crude closed around $64, WTI just under $61.
So increased supply could push prices down further. How does that feed into air cargo?
Well, fuel is a huge cost for airlines. Jet fuel prices track crude oil pretty closely, usually. So lower oil prices could mean lower operating costs for airlines.
And could that mean lower air freight rates for shippers?
It could, potentially, but it's not always a direct pass-through. Depends on hedging, airline pricing strategies, overall demand. Lots of factors. Plus, the Iran talks could still fail, which would limit supply, and OPEC plus final decision isn't made yet.
So potential relief on fuel costs, but still uncertain. And I guess the trade talk delay also supported oil prices a bit by easing fears of tariffs hurting demand.
That's the thinking, yeah. Less fear of an immediate trade war slowing down economies and reducing fuel consumption. It all ties together.
It really does. You've got the specific air freight rates showing slight global firming, maybe hinting at that ocean disruption effect, but lots of regional differences and still below last year.
Yeah.
Then you have trade talks causing market swings and business uncertainty.
Yep.
And oil prices moving based on geopolitical talks and supply expectations, which could eventually impact carrier costs.
It's a complex web. Definitely. The TAC index data gives us that ground level view, while the news on trade and oil paints the broader context influencing it.
It's fascinating seeing how these pieces, air freight indices, trade policy, energy markets, all interact and shape the logistics landscape and, the macroeconomy overall.
Absolutely.
So listening to all this, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How might these dynamics, these shifting sands in air freight, trade, and fuel, how might they specifically impact your sector or your business decisions in the coming months?
That's the key question, isn't it? It's certainly a landscape that needs close watching and some careful strategic planning.